Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2020 MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference Competitive Advantage Talks presented by Craft Analytics Group. My name is Lindsay Solitar, and I'm a first-year student at MIT Sloan, and it's my pleasure to introduce our first presentation of the weekend, College Football Analytics, analyzing film and tracking data concurrently to gain an upper hand. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Kartik Malhotra, Director of Sports and Analytics at Texas A&M Football.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. All right, before I start off, just a pro tip. Never wear new boots on the morning of a conference. It hurts. All right. I work for Texas A&M Football. What's up? All right. I'll talk about a scenario here. We got 10 seconds left on the clock. We need a touchdown to win the game. The head coach is about to call the play, and the sports scientists and the performance analysts see the head coach walking towards him, and they get scared. And the head coach is marching faster and faster and faster. He gets to them and he's like, "Tell me, what receiver do I need to put in the slot in order to call a perfect play, in order to score a touchdown?" They do the analysis. They see the change of direction numbers through the GPS. They see a player's heart rate. They see the past trends. They see whom he's going to match up against, and they make a suggestion. The play starts. The quarterback rocks back, throws a perfect pass. The receiver jumps, catches the ball, stutters, walks into the end zone, touchdown, and they win. That never happens. My name is Kartik Malhotra, and it's a pleasure to be here. So the topic of my presentation is analyzing film and tracking data concurrently and how it gives us a competitive advantage in playing in the SEC. A little bit about my background. I studied engineering, like most Indians. In India, we say we first study engineering, then we figure out what we want to do with our lives. So I studied engineering, and then I came to the US to study a master's program in sports analytics. I've been working in sports analytics for 11 years now. First it was India, and now it's the US. And I specialize in machine learning, data visualization, and data mining. I've split up my talk into 3 sections, basically. The first one is video coding, which is basically film. The second one is football analytics, and the third one is basically player tracking. It was 2013, and we were about to go into the football season, and I had just joined Florida State with Coach Fisher, and we wanted to find out trends, like our own trends, self-scouting. But the problem was that all the past data that we looked at, there was stats came up with an ICE system which gave you, hundreds of metrics. The problem was every time we look at data, we're playing in the ACC. So there are probably 4 big games that you play in a year. So the data that we got was probably not good data, because for a lot of the other games, in the second half, you're putting your backups in. Secondly, like a bunch of our players, because we play college football, a bunch of our players leave after the end of the year. So again, the data was insufficient and limited and probably not good. And so what we had to do was we had to go back and we decided, I spoke to multiple NFL coaches and college football coaches and obviously guys who are on staff with us. And we came up with a system wherein we said, all right, we are going to have a PFF-like report for every single practice. So for a quarterback, seeing completions, incompletions, all that stuff. That was the reason why we came up with it. Second main reason for doing that was that it completed the whole picture, because we had the GPS, we had heart rate monitors, we had biomechanic sensors. But that gave you information about an athlete's fatigue, about an athlete's movement, about an athlete's athletic performance. We didn't have anything that could quantify an athlete's football performance. And that was the reason why we did it. The one on the top, the thing on the top is for the offense. So one of the things that you look at is you look at, for a quarterback, you look at completion percentages, which is pretty basic. But then going from there, you're saying, all right, is he completing passes, or is he, if he's completing passes to a particular receiver, what route is he best at? What's the best play that he's in? What's the best play that he's running? For a receiver, you know, what catches is he dropping? You know, does he fare good in a particular play? Does he fare good in a particular route? And you can correlate all that information to the GPS, and you can be like, all right, you know, this kid runs 21.5 miles an hour, but does he run the right route? And that basically completed the whole picture. For defense, you know, we look at hurries and everything that's on there. And for like O-line, D-line, obviously from GPS you get accelerations and change of direction numbers. But one of the main things that we found out we had to look at was time from snap to the first contact. So the time from snap that a D-end or O-lineman or D-tackle makes to the first contact of his opponent. This is a basic report. Before, you know, you guys, I guess, will have presentations, so you all can obviously zoom in and have a look. But I'll tell you a story on here. A few years ago, one of our quarterbacks, you know, it was spring training, and he was a new kid, and I was doing real-time monitoring, and we spotted that every time before the ball was snapped, his heart rate would spike up. And kept on happening, play after play after play. We looked at data. We looked at data after practice, and we correlated to film, and kept on happening. Every time before the ball was being snapped, his heart rate would spike up. And I went to the head coach, Coach Fisher, and I was like, Coach, I don't know football, but this is not normal. Why is this happening? And he looks at me, and he's like, you tell me. And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, that's happening because the kid doesn't know plays. Now, so for the entire summer and fall camp, our main focus towards that quarterback was making him learn plays, making him learn how the playbook was. Because, you know, as we play pro-style offense, and the kid had come from a system in which he was running a spread offense before, it was kind of tough for him. He came back into fall camp and was a completely different quarterback. Like, he started with us, beat out the competition, started with us for the season, and had a phenomenal season first year. So, you know, yes, it's important to do all this, but there's a huge mental element that also goes into it. And using biomechanic sensors, using heart rate monitors, having sports psychologists on campus really, really helps to kind of identify that. This is basically like a defensive report, looking at pressures, looking at times that he has attempted, a defensive player has attempted strips. Now, you know, he may not strip the ball, but what's important for a coach is he at least trying to strip the ball, and every time that he gets an opportunity to do so. Now, on here, do not look at, let me see, do not look at the sack, but look at, well, this stopped working. But look at the contact the O lineman makes with the D lineman. And that's what these numbers are. So these are the average for so many of our practices, but every single rep in pass rush is broken down. And there's another story that goes with this. You know, we were at Florida State, and one of our centers, every time that he would go up against Derek Nardi, you know, who just played for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, his time to contact would go up. And I went to the O-line coach, and I was like, you know, I mean, everybody else, he's fine. Every time he goes up against Nardi, his time to contact spikes up. And he was like, and he looked back in the film, and he comes back to me the next day, and he's like, that's because he's scared of Nardi. So he's backing off too much. Now, coaches don't understand acceleration numbers and all that, but they do understand times. They do understand if the time goes up from 0.4 seconds to 0.7 seconds, there might be something there. and if that's happening consistently. So the second part of my segment, so that was for self-scouting, but then looking at opposition, yes, you know what you want to do, yes, you know how you're going to do it, you know what your playbook is, but then how do you use that in order to beat the opposition? Okay, well, sorry. For our defensive coordinator, what's really important is coming up with single variable, double variable, and multivariable tendencies. And it helps us solve a particular aim. The first one is to obviously determine play calling tendencies. Second thing is that it helps him write practice scripts. And I'll kind of go into that in a second again. But the third thing, the most important reason why single variable, double variable, multivariate tendencies are so important, because it helps them come up with cheat sheets. If you see this particular thing, what happens? Because you aren't allowed to use iPads and computers in boxes. We came up with the run pass algorithm in 2016 when we were about to play Michigan. We couldn't use it real time, but that's a real time algorithm. We still come up with this so that the coaches can train their brain before a particular game. The accuracy that we had just from 5 major variables, down, distance, hash, personnel, down, distance, field position, hash, and personnel, 5 things. 5 things that a coach needs to take into account before a team actually lines up. The accuracy was 79.4%. We got 54 of the 68 plays correct. That accuracy goes up the moment you add into the formation. It goes further up if you add into it the back set. How many of you are familiar with the filter system, or like creating filters in Excel? Most of us, right? Brilliant. So on the left, we came up with like a fancy filter system. I said, all right, all these players are going to show up, and the numbers and plays are going to show up on a football field. And a defensive corner was like, look, I don't want that, give me Excel. So scrapping that, we came up with an Excel system. But what this does is, it's kind of blurry. But what this does is, it basically tells him, when he can just click through the whole system, it basically tells him on a particular situation, what is the team running? What's the exact play that a team's running? What's the strong route? What's the weak route? And that really, really helps. This is, again, we know what we are doing this, all this, and having our coaches buy into the data, it's absolutely valuable because it really, really helps us change or tinker as to what we are doing, and that's where self-scouting comes in, seeing what's working, what's not working in practice, and again, comparing that, matching that with the tracking data that we get. Now, NFL teams are blessed and fortunate to actually get tracking data on their opposition from Zebra. We didn't have that. We wanted to do something similar. So I've pulled a couple of PhD students in, and I was like, my background is machine learning and AI and all that, and we pulled a couple of people in, and we were like, all right, let's build an in-house, computer vision system that can potentially pull data of broadcast film. And we did that. The advantage that it gives us, it helps us when it comes to recruiting, and I'll talk about it, helps us filling the holes. But it's massive for us in matchups. And I'll kind of go into that in a second. It also helps us kind of build up simulation models. These are all the metrics that we look at, and you're going to have the presentation later, so you can obviously go through that. There's a huge obsession in the market. Oh, what's this guy's top speed? Top speed's good, but it's also one of the most, if you're looking at football, just strictly football, it's one of the most worthless metrics to have, because it just tells you an athlete's top end. Seeing how much time an athlete takes to go from 0 to 5 yards, zero to how much speed can he go when he's in the first 5 yards, in the first 10 yards is massive. And I'll give you an example. Devontae Freeman's top speed that we ever recorded at Florida State was 20.4 miles an hour. But his awesomeness was that he could go from 0 to 18 miles an hour in about 8 yards. So by the time you're looking, you're snapping, he's gone. And that's why, like, if you talk about hitting the holes, like, he could have done that, like, you know, at a really high acceleration. And that's why, like, looking at all these metrics are so important, instead of just looking at top speeds and all that. I'll give you an example of how we do matchups here. You know, a DB has made the main strengths of a DB is change of direction after he backpedals, his acceleration after the turn, and his second and third acceleration. So after he's running, you know, what acceleration can he generate to actually keep up with the wide receiver? For a wide receiver, that's the wide receiver, this acceleration in the picture. The first one is his takeoff. The second one is when he gets to about 3 to 5 yards of a receiver, and his ability to stick his foot into the ground and generate that acceleration so that he can get away and create that separation. The third one is once he has gone past the DB, to create that separation, to pull himself away. So this is from like a computer vision system. The one on the left, the guy on the left is one of the Clemson receivers. His main strength was the second acceleration. So whenever he got about 3 to 5 yards close to a DB, he could stick his foot in the ground and create that 5, 6, 7 yard separation, which was huge. The defensive back, like in the middle, DB1, he's a straight line guy. Doesn't really have much change of direction. One of the mistakes that we made, actually, I don't want to go into that. Yeah, but he doesn't have the best change of direction. The second DB right here has great change of direction, has a good top end speed. So when you're matching up against that particular receiver, you want to match that guy up against that particular receiver, because then you are comparing apples to apples. Otherwise it can be very, very off. If you're just looking at top speeds, the guy in the middle has like a higher top speed because he's more of a straight line guy. His top speed that we recorded was 22.6 miles an hour. Phenomenal. But the kid cannot change direction. The guy on the right probably doesn't have as much of a top speed. His top speed is 21 point something, but his acceleration metrics and change of directions were brilliant, making him a better football player. This is the data. This is the way the data is presented to the coaches. I mean, I haven't included change of direction on there, but these acceleration numbers for a particular team, you know, our head coach gets that. The one in the middle is we do a SWOT analysis, and our head coach loves a SWOT analysis. So you're looking at what's his strengths, what's his weaknesses, and then what are your opportunities and threats. So change of direction, acceleration, distance that he gets, distance that he takes to get to his top speed, all that stuff. And then in opportunities and threats, you're actually looking at matchups. You know, how can you beat this particular receiver? How can you beat this particular DB? Whom are you going to best match up against? Now, different coaches have different things that they like. A head coach likes the first two. Our defensive coordinator wants me to text him everything. So much so he spells my name wrong. But you know, it's really, really fascinating to see what a coach actually likes and how you can actually communicate and get that point across. Again, you know, we've applied this to our recruiting model as well. So this is Damani Richardson. He's on campus with us at Florida State now. Phenomenal player. Had a pick against Alabama last year. But actually taking this data, breaking him down, comparing apples to apples, seeing, all right, how does this guy actually fare up on the football field? Combine metrics are great and all that, but it doesn't really complete the picture. For example, if you're looking at receiver, you want to see if you need a guy whom you want to run like long routes, go routes, post routes. You want to see what is he actually hitting on go and post routes, in his high school or in his college, so that when he comes to college or when he comes to the NFL, how can you actually use him? If you're just looking at combine numbers, it can be, it doesn't really tell you the whole story. And again, we do SWOT analysis on the kid, and we break every single recruit down the same way. So, how does that particular recruit line up against the kid, every single kid that we have played up against, every single kid that's on our team? Because at the end of the day, the goal is to fill the holes. We want to get somebody whom we don't have, some hole that you're trying to fill. If you get 5 players who are exactly the same, it's okay, but you'd probably do well if you have a little more diversity. You can probably run a lot more things. So here we're at the final slide. I sport. You do all this, but this is football analytics. It's really, really important to actually take sports science into account. Our quarterbacks wear biomechanic sensors. Our kickers wear biomechanic sensors. Everybody has a GPS. We use sleep monitors. We use force plates. We use node board systems. Taking all that data into account is very, very beneficial when it comes to actually completing the picture. Self-scouting has been huge for us, and again, combining information, combining variables is very important, because once you know your own strength is when it becomes easier to exploit what the opposition's doing. Since 2013, we have obviously, depends on cornerbacks and all that, but we have seen that we are able to execute a lot more successful plays. Opposition analysis, again, is extremely, extremely crucial, because it's good to see what an opposition's doing, and it's massive to strategize against them. And again, it's huge for us in recruiting. So that's all from me. I'm Kratik Malhotra, and thanks for having me. Any questions? Yes, go on. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Specifically to recruiting data.
Yep. That's a huge thing. I think one of the main reasons. So if you look at a lot of films that are from the Miami area, a lot of those guys shoot films from behind the glass. So you see glares, and the system, doesn't work. So yes, you got to be very careful. There's going to be a lot of noise, but you have to be very, very careful with what you're looking at. Otherwise, it's just pointless.
Can you give a ballpark of approximately what percentage of film you get you're actually able to apply?
Well, so like a lot of times, if you can't get the highlight films, a lot of the game films are like they play games on better venues in which the video quality is a lot better. So that's work for recruiting guys. They can actually go in and pull in the exact film from other games and give me the film, and we can evaluate it. So. But any other questions? All right. Well, I appreciate y'all having me, and yeah, have a magnificent day. See y'all later. Thanks.